Hello, this is another video in the series of basic Windows network management, and in this video I'm hopefully going to go through and demonstrate to you how to use group policy to send settings to users and to computers. So to save you walking around every computer in your business or in your establishment, you only need to apply the policy into group policy and it will install software everywhere or change a setting across all of the computers. Before I do this, I'm also going to install the virtual machine pop-out control method rather than using the browser console, because the browser console is limited to within this small browser area, so I'm missing probably about an extra 10% of space I could be using, and also it's just generally good to show you. So if you go console and then download the software, if you've not already got it installed on your system, you'll get a pop-up blocked message in the top. You need to click on that and then either click on the link or allow pop-ups and do the same console menu again. So I've clicked on that, scroll down, I'm going to download the software for Windows. If you're not already signed into VMware's website, you will need to sign in and it will download a zip file. Open the zip file and double click the executable within it. And follow the instructions to install it. In my case, I don't want them to know that I'm using it or get information back from me using it, and also I don't want to check for updates on startup. This bit's taking a long time, so I'm going to speed it up in this YouTube video. There we go, it's finished installing. As with most installers, I'm not going to bother rebooting when it tells me I should, and let's see whether it works. So now I can click on the launch remote console, and Chrome will ask me whether I want to open it with the VMware Remote Console app. Yes. And let's see whether it works. It's telling me the certificate is not trusted. That's absolutely fine. The same thing when visiting the main website here. It's not, this IP address doesn't have a valid certificate issued by a certificate authority, so that's fine. Connect anyway. And there we go, I didn't need to reboot my computer, so I'm glad I ignored that instruction to do so. And now I can make that screen much bigger. It should be easier for you and I. And I shall also go over to Bob's PC. And to Jane's PC. And there we are. So now if I log in to the server, Bob's computer and Jane's computer. You should all be good to go in a minute. So on the server, I can move my start menu back down to the bottom, hopefully. That'll look more like most computers that everyone else uses. Perfect. Now I can make the server wider to match all of the other ones I've got going. So before we get into group policy, I'm going to show you how to create a folder share, because later on we're going to use group policy to map a network drive to that folder share, and also to deploy some software, and to do that we'll need that on a shared file as well. Now I'm going to go over to my client computers, so this is Bob's computer, and if we look at this PC, we see we've got the C drive for Bob and a D drive, which is his CD drive, and same for Jane's PC. There's no shared folders that they have access to. There's not like the N drive or the shared document folder or the company share. So we're going to start by doing that on going back to the server, and I'm going to create a central store for all of my shares. Generally, I like putting it either in the root of the C drive, or if there's a D drive with larger storage space, then I'll do that on there. New folder, and I'm going to call it shares. Within the shares folder, I'm going to create, I may as well do two folders here. We're going to do company shared documents, and I'm also going to do another one called software. And software is where I'm going to put software later on in this video that is going to get installed on the computers. On the company shared documents, I want to right click on it, go to properties, and I feel like this is the most sensible way that works for me. In advanced sharing, I share the folder, and in permissions, I give everybody permissions. So everyone has full access to the file share, and within the security section is where you'd want to set your more granular permissions to do with the folder permissions on the server. So in this case, it's pre-assigned. Administrators have full control, but users have only read and execute. For the company shared documents folder, that isn't ideal because it means that all of your users would be able to read the documents, but they wouldn't be able to save the documents back into that folder. So I'm going to add, select a principal, which basically means select a user or possibly a computer if you were doing something which could go against a computer. I'm going to select the group called users, or the other way of doing that is click on advanced, click on find now, and it just gives you a list of all of your users and groups. So the users group, and I'm going to give them write access as well, and modify. And I should be able to click OK, and then close on that. Then the software share, sharing, share this folder, permissions, everyone to do everything. But then within the security tab to do with the file system security, I do want it like this. So the administrators have full control because we want to be able to put software within that folder or modify the files which are in that software share, but we do not want the users to be able to make changes to the software, because it means that they could replace an installer for some software with their own installer, and then the next time the computer reboots it would install that potentially bad or malicious or inaccurate bit of software. So the other thing we actually want to give access to this folder is something called domain computers. So if you imagine when you reboot your computer and it goes to install a new bit of software, at that point you're not logged on as a system user. So you're not logged on as an administrator, and you're not logged on as a standard user either. So the computer itself actually will be denied access to these files. So we do need to go add, select a principal, and in your list of things that you can add should be domain computers. So I'm going to go domain computers. They need read access to that folder, because otherwise they will be unable to fetch the file to then install the software. And that has created two network shares. An easy way to demonstrate or to be sure that you've done that is if we go into Control Panel, Administrative Tools, Computer Management, Shared Folders, and to the Shares section. It shows you what shares exist. You've got the 4 or 5 ones which are, so these ones here are created by default. So the admin dollar share and the C dollar share are just created by Windows, and I think the IPC dollar share are created by Windows just when you install it, and netlogon and sysvol are created because it's a domain controller. Then we've got the company shared documents, which I've created, and the software share, which I've created. The next step I'm going to do before I start trying to map that using group policy is to make sure that these shares are accessible from the client computers. So I'm going to go over to either Bob or Jane's computer, and then a lot of people don't seem to know this trick. They'd start with the network tab and try browsing the network tab, or if this doesn't work, they get a bit stuck, or if the server doesn't appear in this network section, they get stuck. A really useful thing to know, which you may already know, but a lot don't, is if you go start and then run, and then //, and then because I've got an American keyboard, that's going to be entertaining for me to type. Probably have to do the on-screen keyboard. So //, how do I even get to it on this on-screen keyboard? Now there we go. So // and then the name of my server, which, because it's been a few days since I recorded a video, I've forgotten the name of the server. So I'm going to go over to the server, command prompt echo $computer name. So I called it server 2019. I should have been able to remember that, but there you go. So // server 2019. And there is the list of shares. We can see 4 of these shares, and if we go back over to the server, you can see the 3 shares that we're unable to see are the ones with the dollar on the end. If you create a shared folder, and I will quickly demonstrate this, with a dollar on the end, so if I go into my shares, new folder, test share. If I create this share with no dollar on the end, and we go back over to Bob's computer and refresh, we can see that test share. That does exist. We can get into it. I go back over and share it with a dollar at the end of its name. That share disappears, but actually, if we type that name in, test share $, and then press enter, that is actually a share that we can get to, but the dollar on the end of it means that it doesn't appear in that list. So if there's a folder you want to have shared, but you don't want it to be particularly easily browsable by users on your network, put a dollar on the end of it. It's probably more security by obscurity, so I wouldn't have confidential stuff stored within that where users can get access to it because of the file permissions. Make sure that you put other security considerations in there as well. But that's what the dollar on the end of a network share means. So we can definitely get to these folders, company shared documents, software. We can manually map that network drive if we wanted to, and each time the computer was logged in as Bob, that drive would reappear. But if you've got lots of computers and lots of users and people are hopping between computers and you don't want them to have to remember to map the network drive each time, which is a big ask for users, and they shouldn't really have to do that, we can now move on to group policy and automatically mapping a network drive. So in Administrative Tools in Control Panel, I'm going to load up Group Policy Management, and also in there I'm also going to load up Users and Computers. Just as a demonstration that the group policy tree pretty much, or in fact should entirely mirror your layout in Users and Computers. So what I want to do here is under the Office Administrators, I want to create a group policy which will set that company shared documents. I must have closed the window, there we go. That company shared documents, I want it to be N drive, for example, in Explorer. So when you go here into this PC, I want N drive to appear, which will be that company shared docs. So I'm going to apply it to every single user across the company. So we could add it in here, and it would still apply to everyone that's underneath it in the tree, but it's good practice really to apply stuff within the users section specifically, rather than having a very kind of messy layout of some stuff applying here, which would apply to the computers as well as the users, and try to avoid being as wide applying as possible. Try and be as specific and as targeted as possible. So in the computer users section, if you right click and go create GPO, which is group policy object, in this domain, and link it here. So create, and I'm going to do map company shared drive. It's the name of my group policy setting. All that has done is created a group policy object, and it has put essentially, as you can tell from this icon here, a shortcut in the computer users section. If we go to the group policy objects section here, that's actually where the settings live. The settings live there. You can apply them to multiple sections. So if I unlink it or delete it from this section, it doesn't actually delete the group policy setting itself. That's still there. But I could link it to multiple places as well. So you don't have to duplicate an entire group policy settings if you want to apply it to two separate areas within your Active Directory. However, I do want to apply it to all of the users within my Active Directory, so I'm going to put it within the users section. Link map company shared drive. So if I click on it and go to settings, add that to my security zone. Oops. You will see you can ignore most of this information to do with security filtering, links and details, but the computer configuration, there are no settings defined, and the user's configuration, there are no settings defined. So this is totally blank at the moment. I want to right click on it, click on edit, and because this is within the users section, I need to make sure that the settings that I change are within this user's configuration. So sometimes people have asked me, why isn't my group policy applying? And what they've done is they've gone into, for example, mapped company shared drive within the users section, but they've been changing settings within the computer's configuration. Because your group policy is only applying to users, any settings that you set within the computer settings area will do absolutely nothing. So user configuration, and I can never remember particularly where this is. It's probably under preferences, Windows settings. Yep, drive maps. So I can now go in this drive maps section, in this blank area, right click, new mapped drive, and location, a bit like I showed you earlier on Bob's PC. The easiest way I find to get the location or the share name is to right click, go run, do // which once again isn't working because I don't have the correct keyboard layout. / server 2019. Company shared documents, and then copy that name. Location, company shared documents. Use, and I'm going to call it N drive for network drive. So N. OK. And then if I close the group policy editor, and then on this screen to do with the settings, if I refresh and show these areas, you can see that the only setting applied is a user configuration for mapped drives, map drive N, and it will update N drive to be the company shared documents folder. So if I go back over to Bob's, we either just wait some time. So there's, if you Google for how often group policy refreshes by default, there's a document which tells you, I think it's roughly every 15 or 20 minutes. Or if you're impatient, and especially for this demonstration, I'll need to do it, you can force group policy to refresh. So if I'm going to run a command prompt, and we type in gp update, so group policy update, spacebar / force. And there we go. From the server, it's brought that setting over, and the end drive has appeared. So I'm going to just chuck a text document in there. If we go over Jane's computer, what I will actually do for Jane is I'm going to log off and log on rather than doing the group policy force. So sign out as Jane. Sign back in. This needs to be actually a log off and a log on rather than just lock the computer. Go back to this PC, and there we go. We have the end drive as well. So she can go into there, hello from Bob, and so Jane is able to access all the files in the company shared documents. She should be able to make changes to this. Jane has made this change. Fantastic. Go back to Bob's computer and run that. So what we've done there is we've created a group policy object, and also we've created a shared folder, then created a group policy object within our Active Directory domain to share or map that shared drive on all of the users when they log on. The next video will be about how to deploy software to all the computers using a similar method to what we've just done, using group policy and a shared folder. So tune into the next one if that's going to be useful for you. If this video or any of the videos in this series have been helpful to you, it would be really helpful to me if you wouldn't mind subscribing. You don't need to have the notifications switched on, but just the subscription numbers will be really helpful.